Good evening, everybody. Episode, what are we at? 107 of the Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. And tonight, Ben, this is kind of your topic. You dreamt it up. It's the best catchy tag that I've heard in a while, and it's what bugs us or bugs you about camping. And funny enough, what's it about, Ben?
Bugs.
Bugs, right? So it is that time of year. I mean, the temperature's coming up. Just today, uh, Lily was having a bath, and was screaming for me to come in and kill mosquitoes. So when the
Yep.
mosquitoes are out, you know the bugs are not far behind, and then there's going to be wasps and stuff like that coming out as well. But I mean, there are some major ones that seem to bug us all in the woods, like black flies, mosquitoes, gnats, crap like that. And generally, you can kind of deal with them relatively similarly. Or if you get rid of one, you're getting rid of the vast majority, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the time of year for me when they are the absolute worst. Not quite yet, but like late April, May, even sometimes early June. They can come out in walls, in waves, in clouds, and they can engulf people. They are terrifying. They're the stuff of nightmares. And there's things you can do though to make camping, even in this time of year, much more enjoyable. We often said fall is my absolute favorite time to camp. Spring may actually be the worst. Uh, Yet it's also one of the most enjoyable. Everything's starting to turn green. The water levels are high enough that you can get spots that you wouldn't normally get. Like there's so many great things about it, but the
The
flies
smell.
can
I
make,
love the smell this time of year in the woods. Everything smells fresh and growing.
yeah. And you kind of been cooped up and you're really kind of excited to get out and you don't have to deal with the snow and it's kind of exciting in its own right. Like I love every season in its own way, but the bugs are a thing. And I think with a little bit of skill, a little bit of knowledge, there's a ton of stuff you can do to minimize that negative impact of the insect world. So we'll talk about just like physical barriers. We're going to talk about environmental barriers. We're going to talk about chemical barriers, like all the methods we can use to sort of combat uh, this effect in the woods, and it should be pretty exciting. I think it's going to really. Uh,
It's we a couple episodes ago we covered a topic and I can't remember what it was that I said was vastly overlooked. This is
yeah,
another one of those things that is vastly overlooked because what's the number one thing a lot of people forget when they go in the woods? Some way to
Fire.
keep the bugs away. And it ends up making their experience miserable. Now, people that have gone into the woods a fair bit, it's the first thing that's packed. Some sort
Yeah,
of bug repellent, be it natural or chemical or bug net or something, but it's there. Like anybody that's been in the woods has a little experience. That's like high up on their list. It tends to be the less seasoned folks that
yeah,
it becomes an afterthought and they only realize maybe a half hour into their trip that it really should have been higher up the list.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard people say, "Oh, it won't be that bad," or
If you
"Flies
hear
don't."
the words, it won't be that bad, automatically throw that out. It is going to be that bad and probably worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen flies be absolutely miserable. I've seen flies attack someone to the point where I couldn't pick out their physical features. Like they were literally just fuzzy creatures walking around. And I'm not joking. Like it was like watching low def TV when it was like it's really bad static.
The old ATV channel with the rabbit ears.
Yeah, it was that bad, right? I can remember even looking at my own hands and not being able to see the flesh from the flies crawling over. And the next day, like not even being able to close my hand into a fist because all the knuckles were so swollen from fly bites. So this is something that I don't wish on anyone. And there's a lot of stuff we can do. There's a lot of stuff. There's new stuff that's out that you can look into, and there's old stuff that we can talk about. So uh, I think this is it's going to be fun. I think where would you like to start? Let's start about without like external means. What are some things we can do to minimize the risks?
Well, do you want to go without external means? Um, so what do you mean by without external means, I guess? Make
Well,
sure I'm on the right page here.
without the chemicals and stuff, like just
Okay.
how do you avoid flies in general. So like the very first thing is choosing your campsite or your area. Uh, can minimize the overall likelihood of seeing a lot of insects and having to deal with everything else. Because a lot of methods that exist, they're just going to reduce the numbers. But if you got millions, going down to a few hundred thousands, it's an advantage, but not saving your life advantage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just talking to Steve there. He said Barney's River at 6 p.m. bad. And yeah, I know. But yeah, and there, like you said, a good campsite choice can mean a big difference. Generally, everybody wants to camp by water, which is good. But a big thing I look for is some sort of flowing water. I try not to camp beside still standing water.
Yes. Wetlands are horrible. Small ponds really attract a lot of flies. So if there's, like you said, standing water, not a lot of bigger bodies of water, you generally have a breeze, and that can keep the flies down. But even that, once the dies down, uh, they can be quite brutal. In the twilight and dawn is when they're the absolute worst, in my opinion. In the
And Dave
heat of the day,
made a mention. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish your thought first.
heat of the day and the dead of night, they're usually more reasonable. But in that twilight zone,
They
they
come
can
out to
be,
feed. They're like
yeah.
vampires.
What's the yeah.
So Dave said a good one was camp near the overspray of a waterfall, and that's kind of what we did on our first outing. But we realized it cut down on the black flies and mosquitoes, but the flies were still around, and we damn near froze.
I thought about that today. It was really nice out and I had the motorcycle. I was cleaning it up and stuff. And I'm like, man, this is kind of like the time we went camping. It's probably warmer today than
I
it
was about
was
to say
then.
today was warmer than when we went down there for sure, and I think it's warmer overnight, at least here where I'm at, than it was when we were sleeping there for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But
So, yeah, but that did come to mind. Um, but no, just choosing a good site. So you want to avoid marshes, bogs, any like wetland type area. You want to find a spot where it's going to be somewhat breezy and you don't want a lot of shelter from the wind. So it's kind of the opposite of what you look for in the winter and even later in the summer. You kind of want to have those open areas where you have a chance of the wind being too much for them to stick around. Because it seems to me like once one fly finds you, all his family is coming. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
another thing to keep in mind. Sorry, I was reading the comments. Um, Another thing that I look for, especially when it's really bad out, I personally try to set up in hardwood stands. Try to avoid the evergreens and stuff like that. I do find that bugs generally are more prevalent in softwood stands, especially if you get into like a pine stand or a black spruce stand or something like. Well, black spruce you're automatically kind of into a wetter area anyway, but definitely like real sap barren trees, which I guess is most evergreens by definition. But anyway, the more sap that seems to be flowing, the more bugs seem to be there. And we're not just talking mosquitoes and flies and stuff like that, though they are more prevalent in those areas. We are now talking about things like spruce beetles. If you have the laddering foliage there, you can get into ticks and gnats and a whole bunch of other stuff too. They tend to congregate more towards coniferous trees than deciduous or hardwoods.
Low bushy plants are bad for it too. Tall grasses, short bushes, things that like I guess they can kind of like shelter in the wind, and then they come out every time there's this. So you do want this like more clear open areas. Just tends to be a bit better. That's a good starting point. So like we often did it near lakes, like near the coast. You get out on a point where you get some steady breeze going on. You can you know, you won't get the bad flies. You're going to be cold, but you can deal with cold. Cold is easier to deal with by far than flies, in my opinion. But
I don't know if this is a message related to our show tonight or not, but let's take a look.
nope.
Don't
Yes.
think so. I don't know, honestly. Nope. So, moving on. I'll get back to that. So, yeah, location's definitely key. And then, even if your location's not the best, if you have some sort of barrier between you and the bugs, that's another good thing to look into, especially this time of year. Long sleeve shirts, even though they're a little warm, sometimes the trade off, especially if you can get some of those thinner shirts, like I got thin sun shirts I wear when I'm working on the parking lot with the motorcycle courses and stuff like that. And I mean, they really don't hold a lot of heat. They are paper thin. They let a nice breeze through, but generally they'll keep the bugs out. Something, lighter colors they also recommend. One, it'll reflect the heat a lot more, and two, it's easier to see bugs if they are on you, like spiders and ticks and stuff like that. They'll stick out a little better than if you're wearing, like, brown pants and a brown shirt.
Yeah, yeah. I've always been told like black attracts them, so and I believe
And
it.
there might be some truth to that. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But, and then of course, I mean, you might be going extreme here, but when we were doing, I'm thinking, I don't want to say the name of the place in case people get a bad taste in their mouth, but there's an area in Nova Scotia. When anytime we had to go out and do work in that area, we literally like would tuck our pant legs into our socks, tuck our shirts
Yeah.
into our pants. You know what I mean? Like, they have no real way of the bugs being able to crawl into your clothing. And I mean, that is kind of, high level stuff. That's not necessarily necessary if you're going out, just for a walk in the woods or something like that. But if you were in an area that's very heavy with ticks, which was the case with us, that's what we did.
Yeah. Yeah. So now that we're talking a bit about clothing, there is obviously, I mean, there's clothing designed for flies, with built-in screens and abilities to cinch them down. There's also like I have this hat and it has this little symbol in it. It's the not no fly zone stuff from Mark's Work Warehouse, and it has a natural repellent. I say natural. It has a repellent impregnated into it that's supposed to work quite well. And I tried it last year, and it does have some success. And I got right excited over fall because I found a couple of beautiful shirts with the same material in it, and I was like, "Awesome! I'm buying them." And then I got home and tried them on. They were women's.
So they probably didn't fit.
They're in a men's rack,
Oh well. I
but
mean, if
once I
they
put them
fit,
on, you
did you
could
try
tell that
them on before you left, Ben?
no COVID. You can't.
Oh
There's
yeah, I
no
suppose.
right. So, anyways, we got home. So now my wife has two beautiful shirts.
Well,
We're
she's
really
happy.
good. But she's happy. Yeah, she wears them fairly frequently. But so there's stuff like that for sure. Like you said, long sleeve clothing. Like when the flies are bad, cover your flesh. Like and anything that's covered is more protected than anything that's not. By far.
No, 100%. Um, and I mean, I guess it's kind of a chemical means, but it's kind of a not a chemical means. Another thing that some people do with their clothes is the Pethrin. You must have heard of
Yeah.
this, like the Sawyer's Pethrin, and that's basically what that stuff is. It's just infused into it, but you can buy the chemical, and I know we're touching on chemical, and I'll try to stay away from that for later on. But you can infuse that into your clothing, and that clothing is actually good for several washes and several uses.
Yeah. So this one it's pyrethian perm mercury.
Promethean or Promethean. I don't know how to say that, honestly. You're asking a dyslexic to say a word that's bigger than three letters. It's not going to happen.
The gist of it is they impregnate it into the material. It goes on as a clear liquid, from my understanding, and it bonds the material, and it usually lasts about like 40 washes. So they say like 2 to 3 years of wearing it. Uh, it's supposed to maintain the repellents to it. So it's a good product. And I've seen it work. Like it does have an effect. When we were out camping last year, I had that hat. I used to wear it in the canoe and kayak, and I had fewer flies around me than my campmates. So it works. Um,
I don't know if it was in my head or not, and this is just my own thoughts coming out here. Um, Generally, my hat that you see that I normally wear, like my wide brim hat, I
yeah.
always leave it smelling like smoke, and I tend to not have as many flies around it. Don't know if there's something to that, or it's just all in my head, and maybe I smell bad. But,
Well,
well, I do smell bad. I smell like smoke, so.
well, I see. My wife would argue that good clean smoke is a very good smell. Like she actually likes it when I come home smelling like campfire. But now if I can't come home smelling like an old bonfire, and it's not a good thing. So, but nice clean camp smell. She likes that. But smoke is another really good method for keeping your flies in. And I've often done this where you just have a couple of small fires around the perimeter of your camp and just throw like damp grass or something on it just so it smokes.
And generally that'll
Probably.
suffocate them off. You know what works really well? And I didn't believe it until I tried it. Thyme,
Oh,
THYM, like the
yeah.
spice. Grab a little bit of that and throw in your fire. That stuff works for like an hour and a half. It doesn't put off a ton of smoke, but it keeps bugs away surprisingly well. Not so good if there's a breeze, of course, because then it just blows it all away. It's great in the direction the smoke's going, but
Yeah.
if it's more of a still day, that actually covers a pretty good area and it keeps the bugs down fairly well.
I was told they put it in a piece of tin foil with like a couple of holes in it. Sort of like how you'd make.
Kind of like a diffuser.
Yeah, well, yeah, but kind of also like how you'd make char cloth.
Hmm.
And apparently it'll last a lot longer that way.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But same thing, just throw it on the coals and let it smoke, and that smell goes through. I've also heard the shelf fungus, like the horseshoe type fungus,
Yep.
grows in. Just let that dry, and you can cut it up and light it, and it just works a lot like the mosquito coils.
Chaga will do that. I know that. I know a lot of people are probably saying, well, you should be drinking that. But anyway, if you take a small piece of chaga and you light it and you set it on a stone, if it's dry, it works exactly like a mosquito coil. And I honestly love the smell of the stuff.
Yeah,
It's probably
no, so
killing
there's,
brain cells or something, but I love the smell of it.
but yeah, different types of smoke definitely can deter and drive away and potentially even harm the mosquitoes. So, I it works and it's a pretty easy method. And they sell commercial products. Like there's little stoves you can buy now that are meant to just smoke.
Yeah, like egg cartons or something you put in them. I think I've seen those.
And it helps drive the flies away. I mean, it's a method. My grandmother told me about it when I was growing up. Like they used to do it. She said they'd have like these little smoke fires going and around the corners of their property just to keep flies down because
Why not, I guess.
they want you out in this in the outdoors because you're not inside bugging mom and dad. So it keeps the flies off you and keeps you out there longer. It works.
All right. I got one. It's kind of on the chemical route, but not really. This is more for when you're at home doing stuff like this, and I have tried it with some success, which I'm ashamed to say. Scope mouthwash put in a
Yeah.
spray bottle and spray it around your area will actually keep bugs down. I thought it would attract them because of, whatever would be in the scope, but it actually keeps them away surprisingly well. It just doesn't last very long.
Yeah, I was told that is it the green stuff is better.
I have no idea. I used green, but
I think it's old original scope, and I was told if you spray in a like just around the property or around the area you're planning on being in, it'll keep them down for up to a day or two. You just go around and just spray all the way around the perimeter of the area you're going to be in. We've tried it at the cabin at varying degrees of success. I mean, but anything to keep
I
them down.
tried it down in Miragamish where Steve and I were talking about there, and it worked for a couple hours. Well, we are on kind of that natural stuff for around home, especially if you do like a camp or cottage or something like that. You know what does work well, but it takes a little bit of effort. This isn't a one and done kind of deal. There are certain types of vegetation you can plant that deter a lot of bugs from coming in, such as marigolds, lemongrass, peppermints. And there's probably a bunch of other ones too that I can't think off the top of my head, but those are the big ones that I run down on my property in Miragamish, and it seems to have actually cut down on the bugs. I'm not going to say significant, but a noticeable amount. Because my property down there, literally on one corner of it, there's a pond, and it's not quite stagnant water, but it's not fast moving water. And as Steve was joking about there, around 6 o'clock, those suckers can like pick you up and carry you away. I swear we breed mosquitoes for the rest of the province. We have to ship them out or something. Like there is just so many of them.
I know down in the South Shore where my cabin is, there's been days down there where I could only go out for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. That was the absolute limit of what you would spend physically outside. Like you almost ran from the cabin to the car, and from the car to the cabin. Since you're outside, you were getting swarmed. Um,
I've only ever seen them that bad maybe twice. Both is when I was doing work for DNR. And you've heard me talk about PGIs before, but this was, we always do them about May, right? Which is like prime bug season, just before green up is when we try to get it done. And I can remember I was doing it with Rockwood. Was it Rockwood or Bulger? Anyway, I was doing it with somebody. And you have to walk 100 meters and you got to stop and do your counts. And when you stopped, you literally seen like the cloud swarm you. And it was just like out of a movie. We were moving fast because we wanted to get the bugs, not to catch up to us. But literally, the second you stopped, it was like just, and you heard them like swarm around you. And we're generally in long sleeves with hoodies pulled up and like just our eyes sticking out and still just mercilessly getting eaten.
oh yeah, no, it's. Steve asked about DEET and whether it just masks or is an actual deterrent. And I I was always under the impression it was actually a deterrent. Like it actually could.
To
I
my
don't know.
knowledge, not an expert, disclaimer coming straight out, it does both. It masks us because it's a rather pungent smell.
Yeah.
Uh, as you can tell with anything that has a lot of DEET in it, like old musk oil, or if you probably got the old military stuff from Rag Force that was like 90% DEET, 3 drops of it would eat plastic.
Oh yeah.
That stuff was great. Couldn't get it on your skin because it burnt like hell. But if you get a couple drops of that, you were good all day. But the higher the DEET, the
Okay.
stronger the smell seemed to be. So I could definitely see how it masks you. But I think that also actively deters them just from uh, the pure rawness off it. Maybe I don't know.
It definitely like I remember trying to spray bugs with it, and if you hit bugs with it, it does like I think it affects their nervous system or something. Like it messes with them. So does this mosquito coils. Have
Hmm.
you ever seen the effect of mosquito coil on a mosquito?
Yeah, it just drops, just bang right out of the air.
It's like a nerve gas to it.
But you know what has worked really well for me in the past, and I think I've told you this before, and some people out there are probably thinking of it. And before I say that, just want to give a shout out to Roundabout Media, finally able to make it to one of our shows, not just the tail 5 minutes off us when we rant off while we're actually talking about the subject. Thank you for joining us, and being in Florida, man, you are right. That is mosquito paradise. I was traveling with Dad, and we took a load of something down there. I think it was water. Anyway, we got laid over for 3 days just outside of St. Petersburg. And you know what? They breed mosquitoes for the rest of the world. We might cover Nova Scotia, but they do everywhere else. It was terrible. One, it was hot. I mean, I don't do heat, you know that, and it was humid. We were stuck in the truck because if you went outside it, they just tried to carry you away. Like
Yeah.
it was terrible.
I, yeah, there are definitely places that are bad, but I've heard that it can be really bad down there. I haven't seen it, but I don't want to see it.
Nice
Bad.
place, just
Oh yeah,
bad
Miss-
bugs. I think it was right after love bug season or something like that too, in the more northern states. But anyway, back to my point. Something I have tried that actually works. Not so much for mosquitoes, but for black flies. The old bounty sheets.
Oh yeah,
Those actually
yeah.
work. Now, somebody said just to jam one in the back of your hat and it works. I didn't have much luck with that. But if you take an actual bounty sheet and like rub it on your clothes, I actually had decent luck with that. That's at the end of it when I was working with natural resources. That's what I would do before I would go and do one of my runs. Take 1 or 2 bounty sheets and literally just like hammer myself down with it, and then I would go and do my run and significantly less bugs than whoever be partnered up with me. So it might have just deterred them enough to make them turn to somebody else. But in any case, I got bit way less.
This kind of reminds me of the old banana story.
I told you the banana story, did I? So while we're on the subject of the banana story, and for the love of goodness, I hope my dad listens to this one because we used to have so much sick fun out of it. And I am going to tell the banana story. So, down in Marigamish where we used to live, as I said, we lived in a swamp. Mosquitoes were always bad. So, um, when people would come over, they would always say, "Well, how do you deal with all these mosquitoes?" And Dad and I, basically just being, assholes. There's no other word to say it. Playful, playful asshats. Let's go with that. Anyway, we'd always go, oh, it's because we eat bananas. Just eat a whole bunch of bananas and you'll be fine. They'd be like, oh, is that right? And so as soon as they started buying into it, you just fed it to them. You know what I mean? Like, just hammer them. Oh, yeah, bananas are great. They'll get rid of so many bugs. Here, have a banana. And you would start feeding them bananas. So anybody that doesn't know what's going on here is bananas are full of potassium and a few other chemicals. The thing is, it doesn't take long for that to absorb into your blood and seep through your skin. So if you eat a banana, about 15 minutes later, you're going to attract every bug in like a 30-meter radius. Bananas are like one of the worst foods to eat in any kind of bug environment. So anyway, yeah, we'd feed everybody that would show up bananas. We wouldn't get bit at all. And they would just be swarmed and they're like, what's going on? Why are there so many bugs? You haven't eaten enough bananas. And we would just keep feeding them bananas and the cycle would go on. So that's the banana story. And I love telling it because, I mean, it's just evil, but it's hilariously evil. Now, on the flip side of that, I do think there is things you can eat that actually work in the opposite effect. And I think that's citrus fruits and stuff like that. But don't quote me on that. I don't want anybody running out eating a bunch of like grapefruits or something and getting swarmed with bugs. Definitely look into it. But I think it's acidic foods has the opposite effect.
Yeah. Anyway, I can see you doing that. I really can.
Oh man, it was the best fun I ever had. Did I ever tell you about the refrigerator story as well? Next time we go out, remind me. That's a whole other story, bud. I almost killed one of my neighbors. Playfully. Enough that it blew a breaker in the house. Let's go with that. Anyway, different story, different time. But yeah, so anyway, the whole lead way for the story was foods can actually affect the way that bugs will treat you. So when you're out in the woods, a lot of people do grab bananas and stuff like that because, like Melissa, for instance, loves to have a banana in the morning. If we know we're going camping, she will break that regime for about 2 days leading up to it, just to try and flush it out of her system, get a whole bunch of water, because otherwise, she is swarmed and I'm sitting pretty.
Yeah.
So, just something to think about.
You just keep sneaking bananas into her food, don't you?
I know she can't see this. Just camping couples or multiple people in the same tent. If someone leaves the zipper open for more than 30 seconds. Yeah, and that's like Steve said. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was reading the same thing. When you do set up, obviously, like you want to have some pretty strict rules on leaving the tent open and things like that, because once they get in, I mean, everyone has that iconic Canadian moment of being asleep in a tent and that one mosquito.
In a tent? It happens in my bedroom.
Oh, I remember sleeping like at the cabin was really bad. Like when I was a teenager, me and a bunch of my friends, we would get together and we'd go to the cabin and we'd stay at the cabin. And, we'd keep the mosquitoes down. We had a couple of coils usually running and stuff. But in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the night, one of us would wake up and there'd be that zzz, and you could hear it. You could hear it land on like your pillow. Like you knew it was that close and you're like batting it.
All you're doing is waking everybody else up so you can take turns looking for this mosquito.
Yeah, and it would keep people awake for like hours. Like this one mosquito, it's probably a male mosquito. It's not even gonna bite you, but you don't know, and like you're so paranoid, it drives you nuts. Like
they are just tormentors. They are little devils in disguise. But
it's a great bit of fun, great enjoyment.
So the other side of that. Oh, sorry. Nope. Go ahead.
No.
No, I was going to say the other side of that, where we are talking about barriers and zippers and stuff like that, is we never really talked about like bug nets. That's another great barrier, but the big one I'm thinking of is on our hammock systems. Same kind of deal. If you can get yourself a bug net for your hammock, if you hammock camp or whatever, same kind of deal. Don't leave your screen open, and when you're sleeping, make sure you have that screen pulled ever so slightly away from you, because if it's laying right on your skin, it is useless.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like tight clothing. Like loose clothing is way better than tight clothing. I know, like some guys are gonna hate me for this, and a lot of girls too, but uh, a lot of people like the tight leggings and the tight fitting shirts and stuff. And the problem with that in fly mosquito flu, is they'll bite clean through that clothing. Where loose clothing's hanging away, they land on it, they still can't get to you.
So you're telling me
So,
I can't wear my one piece spandex suit anymore, Ben? Like,
especially when you camp with me, buddy.
I was gonna say you had nothing but good things to say about that. That's a
Trying to
horrible
keep,
thought, even for me. Uh,
trying to keep the viewers down.
they take the Axe body spray dudes. I like this from Steve. May the bugs of the world eat any males still wearing Polo cologne from 1986. And if anybody doesn't know what Polo cologne from 1986 smells like, go open the gas cap of your car and take a sniff. Because that's basically what it was pure gasoline. That stuff was horrendous. And then, of course, Roundabout Media followed up with the Axe body spray. And you know what? As as we get older, I think, and it's definitely a guy thing. There's not many women running around with Axe body spray, I can tell you that. But Axe body spray, generally from the ages of, let's say, 13 to like 19. I don't know why, but the male population seems to think it's a shower in a can. So, but there's stuff in that attracts bugs. Like
Oh
this is
man.
the other thing. A lot of your deodorants, colognes, sprays, stuff like that. Yeah, it smells good to you and maybe your partner, but it's going to attract bugs. Heavy scented shampoos. If like this is another topic, I guess we can talk about when it comes to bug control. Is if you're out there and you're bathing and you're washing up, non-scented stuff is far better to go with.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Certain strong scents will deter some insects, but overall, you're better off with non-scented things. I think like tea tree oil will deter a lot of stuff.
Tea tree oil, mint. Like I said, I know that I've said that before. Anything with peppermint will come in. Lemon smell seems to deter. You can get some natural well, I don't want to say pesticides, bug repellents or bug deterrents that are basically made from tea tree oil, lemongrass, and some sort of peppermint. I know there's
Yeah.
a specific kind, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
We used it for a while. We had quite the battle with head lice a few years ago with my daughters, and we got to the point where I mixed this stuff up, and you would twice a day. I mean, besides the 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 chemicals that we washed her hair with every 7 days or something, we would just take that tea tree oil mixture and spray into her hair and just brush it out, and it seemed to keep the numbers down until we got it under control.
Mm.
But it was quite the battle, and that was a method that definitely helped minimize it. Uh,
Yeah, and I don't know what it is in the tea tree oil. It's definitely a deterrent though, because a lot of your like all natural sprays for dogs and stuff is tea tree oil, but it's good for your skin and stuff too. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind if you're gonna be using chemicals. If you can find an alternate, environmentally friendly one that's still good for your skin,
yeah,
great way to go.
there's a there is a local. I'm pretty sure it's a local to Nova Scotia type. There is a company that was selling something to get rid of ticks, and it was similar. It was natural products for dogs and stuff. And
Yep. Oh, and Alex said eucalyptus is considered a bug repellent. That was the other one I was trying to remember and couldn't think of. Good point, Alex. Thank you. I can't remember now. Hopefully, he doesn't mind me mentioning his name, but Randall Graham. He was a blacksmith. I don't know if he still dabbles in it. You and I have talked about him in
yeah,
some of our private chats there. But he had a friend that helped him with Lyme disease, and her name was April something or other. And I know she has her own page. She was giving out samples of all natural bug repellent at the last Nova Scotia Bushcraft gathering, which I tried, and it
yeah,
actually worked. Like I don't know if it would hold up the same as a good DEET product, but I mean, once again, you're talking about harsh chemicals when you get into DEET. Like it says right on it, possibly carcinogenic, right? But this was a lemongrass and a few other things, and it worked pretty good for like your backyard stuff. I don't know how it would work deep woods, but for your
yeah.
backyard stuff, it was great. I used it on the kid because she was only, what was she at the last one? 2 years ago, three.
Something like that. Yeah,
So
2.5. Um, what's up
Tim
to now?
Hortons cups. Trays or egg cartons. We already mentioned the egg cartons, but Tim Hortons cups, that's another good point. Those will smoke and give them off. Do y'all smudge burn the Tim Hortons? So, yeah, all natural DEET. And I agree. We talked about smoke, and it's.
So here's
Oh,
one.
sorry.
Um, Years ago, I was told like the Beothics in Newfoundland, the big reason they were putting the red ochre on their skin was to help keep down flies.
Could be. It's a very bitter thing. So the bitterness off it may make them untasty, if you will.
But I think it also added like a physical barrier that made it a little more difficult. I don't know. Like there is a science to it, but they said that was part of the reason they put the red ochre onto their skin, and it turned their skin like a reddish color. And I've seen people even paint boards with red ochre. Like
Mm-hmm.
you get the ochre, you mix it with water, and you can paint the board. It would permanently stain the board, or semi-permanent, anyways. And but you could do it to your skin, and I've tried it. Like there was red ochre in the area where I grew up, and we used to play with it and stuff, and had a lot of fun with it. But that was one of the things I was told, and I've heard other places, like even like a layer of mud, like if the flies and stuff are bad enough, you can coat your body in a layer of mud, and it helps keep the flies down. Like,
I was just going to say, if you are in a situation where you are desperate, because you are going to get muddy,
yeah,
mud is actually a great bug deterrent. Because once again, it's that physical barrier, right? It kind of hides your heat signature a little bit. We're not talking predator type camouflage here from the old Arnie and
yeah,
but it does hide your signature a little because some insects are attracted to your body heat, or more specifically the carbon dioxide that's emitted from your body, and it does provide you a little bit of a cover from that. And two, it also works as a sunscreen because you're once again putting that physical barrier in. But yeah, it does work. But it's very messy. But in a desperate situation, I can tell you right now, I would be covered in mud. And clay mud is by far the best. It goes on even. It'll kind of semi harden to your skin, and it's great. I have used it on my arms because I
yeah,
was just that desperate to get some relief from bugs. And also great for bee stings or hornet stings or any kind of stings, really.
yeah, yeah. I've heard that. Um, I think some of it's just a cooling effect and the natural. Like I guess it does kind of draw some of the venom, the poison out a little bit.
I'm with you. I think it's more the cooling effect, but it feels good. So, so yeah, I guess then the last thing, or one of the things we should talk about, is we haven't officially talked about DEET products. Now, not all DEET products are created equal, in all
No.
honesty. So, the higher the DEET, generally the more bug repellent or better bug repellent it'll be. However, the trade off on that is it's a lot worse for your skin. Like some people are pretty sensitive to it. It'll actually burn their skin. Now, I'm talking the old, I think it was 45 or 50% deep musk oil, and we're talking a ways back now, maybe 15 years that you used to be able to get. It came in the little tiny dropper bottles, and I was
And
always bad for like just on my hands, cover my arms, just my arms, and that would keep my whole body clean. But my arms would burn.
yeah.
I just didn't care. It was better than getting eaten. Now there's probably long term effects that I still can't decide from that. But
I remember like putting drops on my clothing and stuff too, trying to get it to work. And I'm not sure it's as effective, but it does help. But DEET does have it's time tested and proven to be something that does work. And there's a reason that pretty well every fly or every like fly and insect repellent contains some degree of DEET, unless it specifically says it doesn't.
yeah, you can
Uh,
get DEETX or something, or not DEETX, but there's something that has the word DEET in it, some bug brand, and it's DEET free. So you actually have to read the active ingredients.
we had a product from Amway called D15 that was rumored to be really good. I think I still have a can of it, never been used. Uh, but there's a ton of products out there you can buy, and I'm gonna say like they work with varying levels of success, and one may work better at one spot than it does in another spot. But we had a lot of luck with Skin So Soft. I think Johnson's and Johnson now sells
Yep.
it under the same bottle. The bottle's identical, but now it says off Skin So Soft, where before it used to be just like Uh,
The three S's, that kind of link going down.
yeah,
Skin
and it
so
was
soft.
just,
Yeah. Skin so
it,
soft. Yeah, makes sense now.
it was never intended originally as like a fly repellent, but people found it worked, and I mean,
Well, I mean,
it,
that's still the only recommended for children under 12, I think.
yeah. The
Because
other
DEET
thing
is not good for you. Surprise, surprise.
we used to buy when my daughters were the youngest, the little off fan, it's
Mm.
supposed to create like invisible bubble around you. And we used to buy that. You buy the little cartridge that goes in it, and we used to hook it to the car seat or whatever. And then when you're out about, it was supposed to keep the flies away from like the car seat or the stroller they were in, and it seemed to work relatively well.
I was going to say, have you ever seen the bracelets?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have had zero luck with those. Now, I don't know if it's because, I'm a full grown adult and they're made for smaller people or if they're no good. Like, I don't know, but I've heard people swear by them.
Yeah.
Me, it's a fashion accessory, honestly. I don't know if I need to lick it first. Yeah,
Nothing wrong with you, bud.
that's what I mean. The twitches are normal. So, Roundabout Meaty, you said you use tobacco to heal stings. Can you give us a little bit more info in that? Because what do you do? Just put a little tobacco on it, grind it up with water. I assume you must, mush it up with water or something like that. But I do know, like, Aboriginal peoples, tobacco was one of their medicines. They used it for smudging and for self healing and things like that. But I'd be curious with a little bit more information on that. Just got to throw out Colin's Bug Jacket, $20 on Amazon, invaluable. And that's what I mean. Like bug nets, like the bug net jackets and stuff, those things are great if you're just out touring the woods and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
they say they don't add heat. I find I sweat really bad in them, is my problem. So,
That comes back to the hammock thing. Like, does the net on a hammock add temperature? And I swear to God, it does.
I think it does too. Maybe it's in my head. Maybe it's in our heads, but I'm with you. I think it does. That's why I try to keep my net just off my skin, but not that far away. I have three bottles, 100% Deep Woods DEET.
Yes.
100% Deep Woods DEET. Now that stuff must be able to crank an engine. Like that has to be some good stuff in that. Degreases and starts are all in one shot.
Yeah.
DEET wipes and Thermacell mosquito repellent personal units. I've often wondered about those, Alex. Have you used one of those Thermacell mosquito repellent units? That's very similar to what you were talking about, Ben. But once again, it's one of those products I have zero experience with.
I've seen them. I haven't bought those. The ones we had were like a gel, and they didn't heat up so much. It was just a fan. But the thermocells, I think, are even better from my understanding of it. But I haven't tried it, so I can't really. Yeah. Really.
Now, the other thing, once again, kind of backyard solutions, is they make propane, mosquito, and bug catchers as well as deterrers. I hear they work great. I hear they're very expensive to run as well, though. I've never used one, so I don't know. I know the good old fashioned bug zapper is a lot of fun to watch at night if you're sitting outside with a few wobbly pops about 30 feet away.
Sadly, the bug zapper rarely is zapping the the bugs that bug you. It just gets like moths and things that are
Yeah,
attracted to light. So they're a hell of a lot of fun, and no doubt. And then you hear them hit something big, it's like bzzz.
when they stay sizzling for 6 to 7 seconds, you know it caught something good. But I mean, much like you, I agree they don't really target the bugs that are really being the pests. They're just kind of a novelty fun toy. We don't have one here at the house. I thought about buying one a half a dozen times, but to what end? You know what I mean? To what end?
The father-in-law used to have a little electric thing. It was like a little fan, and it's supposed to suck mosquitoes in. And he had it stuck at the edge of his deck, and you could pull it out, and you'd see all like the dead mosquitoes in there. They'd be all dried out and more or less dust. You'd see like the odd wing and stuff. And I think it definitely worked. It kept the numbers down because he's in literally a pine forest. Uh, Anyone who's watched enough of our shows have probably seen part of the forest at least because I've videoed. We've done podcasts from there before, and it can be flies can be bad there, and that used to work. Now I think it's been a lot of years and it probably stopped working since then. Like it just failed over time. But he used it, it worked. There's a ton of things you can do, right?
I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that help. I don't think there is no perfect solution, in all honesty. I mean, it's a sheer numbers game. We are vastly outnumbered when it comes to, skin biting insects versus people in the woods or anywhere, honestly. So at some point, these things, they're great deterrents. I don't think anything is 100% perfect other than just not going outside, which is
Yeah.
not perfect
No,
either.
no, no, that's not a perfect. That's not a solution to the problem. uh, yeah,
No,
I've heard of hanging bags of water. I've also heard some people swear that a brown paper bag uh, can have an effect too. I've also heard that's just for wasps, but people say overall it just drives other insects because they don't want to be around the wasps and they assume it's a wasp nest. Uh,
I'm curious about this one Alex is talking about, though. I have one. You have a pad you put in, and there. I think he's talking about the thermal cell mosquito repellent.
yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Like I said, I have no real. I got no experience with them, unfortunately. Now, something I do have, and now we'll move on to some of the other insects just a little bit while we're on the topic, because we are talking about backyard stuff now. Have you ever tried the fake paper wasp nest?
Yeah, that's kind of what I mentioned was the paper, even a paper bag or
Hmm.
will work. But yeah, hanging at an eave well tends to drive a lot of insects kind of away. It's some kind of deterrent. I've also along the same lines. Have you tried like the pop bottle trick?
Flip one upside down, put a little Coke in the bottom of it, yellow jacket catcher or something like that.
They get in, they can't figure it away, they just die in the bottom. Yeah.
I know it catches them. I don't know if it drags the numbers down, but I have tried. I went out and bought the professional hornet nest replacements, and you know what? I actually had a significant drop in hornets here last year, and here was bad. The people that owned this property before us were like they're botanists or horticulturists or something. The ground out back is great for growing stuff, but there's so many. I don't want to say so many exotic plants, but there's a fair amount of exotic plants out there, like a magnolia tree. We have a weeping fern and a few other things that seem to attract insects really bad. And hornets was one of the ones that was really big for this area. Like we had hornets in the sunroom rafters. I had them in the garage. They were in the ground. They were everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing like 100 hornets when we first moved in here. And finally last year, I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna try a couple of these. I got them about this time of year. Put them up, and the sunroom was still right off. I'm not gonna lie, but aside from the sunroom, the play area where the kids are and stuff like that, that was all good. So I mean, there must be something to them.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah.
But yeah,
It's a,
just like OBO said there, they work, but they only work with basically hornets and bees. And I didn't find they worked with bees because we had honeybees build a gigantic nest under the slab that our house is sitting on. And I mean gigantic. We figured it was like huge kind of deal. But we left them alone. They're honeybees. They didn't bother us. We didn't bother them. Things were good. And they buggered off. By the fall, they were pretty much out of there.
all right.
So they must have got tired of it and moved on from everybody walking by. Because literally, I had them land on me, stuff like that. Never bothered us.
Yeah. I think all of it is a numbers game. Anything you can do to just drop those numbers, you're never going to get 100% of every fly away, every insect away, but you definitely want to drop those numbers and control them. I mean, the big ones that really bug me, the black flies, the sand flies, the mosquitoes, and the ticks. Like, I
Mm.
mean, those are the ones that I most hate. Wasps generally have not bothered me too much. Try not to kick their nests, stay away from them. They generally stay away from you, in my opinion.
I was gonna
Um,
say the only real run-in I had with wasps in the woods is when you stumble on a nest. If you go to
yeah,
do your business in the woods or something and kick a rock over and you find out that that was an entrance to a hornet's nest or a wasp's nest, that's generally when they tend to cause you problems, when you least want them to cause you problems. But just for like being out there in a campsite, and that can be alleviated by proper scouting, of course. But I mean, very little problems with them in the woods.
yeah, for sure. I agree. That's Can't we just go like June bug move to wherever Trump lives?
So this is the thing. June bugs themselves are a harmless bug. They don't bite. They don't really cause any kind of discomfort to a person other than they're a gigantic noisy bug that they have little hooks on their legs and they tend to get caught in people's hair. There's a gross factor to them, but they're kind of harmless. And dogs seem to love to eat them for whatever reason, which is
You
terrible
know,
because
here's the thing. I don't know, and I hate getting political, but I'm not sure that I would wish Trump on even June bugs.
But have you ever had the pleasure of love bugs from our southern neighbors down there? They're kind of akin to our June bugs.
I am.
Yep,
No, I
but they come in swarms. Roundabout Media, you're down Florida way. What's your take on love bugs? Do you guys get them down? That we have enough with those flies and love bugs. So there, he just mentioned love bugs. So what's your experience with love bugs? I haven't really experienced them in full season. I always kind of snuck in at the tail end of the season or snuck out at the tail end of the season, whichever we want to. So I've seen them, but I've heard the guys at the truck stops and stuff be like, yeah, they'll swarm you. Like they don't swarm you, but swarms of them move out and they'll just like pollute your vehicles. It's like
Really?
driving through a rainstorm that you can't get rid of with your windshield wipers.
I've had mosquitoes hit a van so hard it was like rain.
Yeah. And Troy, I will tell your wife, but much like mine, I can guarantee you she won't listen. I've told Mel 100 times they're harmless. They don't have teeth. Their jaws can't unhinge. They're kind of creepy.
Um, Here's ones that I've had trouble with in the past. Is we called them copperheads. I don't know if there's a different name, but they have like the copper colored head, and they sting when they bite. They sting hard, and sometimes they're like a greenish or a reddish head, but it's a really hard head to it, and it's usually bright metallic. Um,
Sounds like kind of a beetly thing. Two long antennas on it.
nope.
Hmm. You'd almost have to send me a picture. I can't think of what you're talking about, but
The other one was like a stout. I think we all know what a stout is, but maybe I'm Newfies and
I was about to say, may want to explain that one for our non-Newfoundlandese.
it might be similar to what you guys call like a deer fly or a horse fly.
Moose fly.
It's a bigger than a house fly, and it actually does sting. Like and they're usually I think black.
I was gonna say we got something here on the mainland called a moose fly. It looks like a house fly on steroids, and when they bite, it feels like it takes the arm off. I don't know what the real name of them is. Maybe it is stout, but yeah. Funny enough, one of the things I was going to mention is 4 flies: house flies, deer flies, house flies, and what we call moose flies. Uh, Fake dragonfly pins on your hat deter
Oh
those
yeah.
a lot. And it was one of the pilots from Natural Resources. I can't remember if it was Dave or Bill, but anyway, one of them was selling these once, and I bought one. And if anybody goes through my Facebook pictures like years ago, you'll see it on my hat. And I wore it faithfully. And you know what? I never got bugged by flies when I had that on. Once again, always a numbers game. There's always people around that I think they tormented more than me, but it was at least a deterrent.
Tried looking up copperhead flies, see if I could send you an image, and it's all like fishing. Oh, like they they were a big thing growing in Newfoundland. Every Newfie knows what I'm talking about. That's the sad thing. But they're here. I've seen them. I've been bit by them here.
Oh yeah,
Like,
they're definitely around. Like there's a couple. I think they're called chiggers. Chickers, something like that. I can't remember. It's like a little natty fly, and man, that thing's got like I swear its jaw on hinges.
yeah.
But
The thing with that one is it rarely swarms you. You get 4 or 5 at a time. Like they
yeah,
just come in, and they're just they suck. And then the stout is a bigger one. It's a heavier insect, and that's the one like you'll be out swimming, and it'll just you see it circling around you like almost like a
yeah. I
bee.
think we call them moose flies. I
Yeah,
think we're
they're
talking
horrible.
about the exact same thing. They're like almost literally the size of like the better part of your thumb.
Yeah, and when they do sting, like it's not like bee sting bad, but it's like somebody pinched you hard.
Yep. That sounds exactly like the same thing we're talking about. Now, there's also one kind of insect that we only have to deal with every so many years, and this is the year for it. It's cicada season.
Mm.
Now, if anybody doesn't know what a cicada is, and I might have the information wrong on this, but, sue me. I'm
They're,
not
they're like 7 year cycle, isn't it?
7 or 11. I can't remember. It's one of the two. I get it confused with craps, so, and I'm no good with either. But it's either 7 or 11. They basically hibernate, and then they come out, and they are noisy. But the problem with them is, much like the June bugs, they're just everywhere, and they'll tend to like hit you. I know we were driving in the truck once down to Dollar Lake Park, and one came in the window. Matt was just, how you drive, your arm half hanging out the window, country driving. One came in and hit him in the chest, and it sounded like a bullet hit him.
Oh yeah.
To every anime ever. Exactly. It's that noisy, hiss, humming sound that you hear in anime and stuff like that. I do remember that from when I used to watch it. But they, I think they're kind of harmless. I don't know for sure. But they are noisy and they're big. Like they are, like 2 to 3 inches big. I have a picture of the one that hit Matt because it fell in the truck. And I was like, what in the hell is this thing? And I had to take it back and identify. I'm like, oh, that's a cicada. Like when I thought cicada, I was thinking like, not
Yeah.
like it's a big insect.
Um, I knew a guy. He crashed his truck because a bee flew into the window. He had the window open. The bee came into the cab, and he panicked, and he let go of the steering wheel and swatted at it. And when he did, it drove right off into the ditch, and he rode his truck off.
I mean, that sucks. That really
It
sucks.
does.
I have my story's not quite that bad. I was responding to a fire call once with the fire truck with DNR, and a hornet got in. And it got in between my shoulder blades. And there's that little pocket where you can't really get your back flat. And by the time I got to where I was going, I had been stung 7 times.
Wow, yeah.
Because I couldn't stop. I'm en route to an emergency. And I'm like trying to squish it and rub it around, but it just would not go. So I think some of them were bites. If anybody is not aware, hornets do bite as well as sting, and they both hurt like the dickens.
I
Um,
uh, I might have a story that kind of matches that. So I was in Newfoundland. I was driving through, coming out of Botwood onto the highway near Bishop Falls, if anyone knows the area. And when I was doing the corner, I had like the aviator glasses on and an open face helmet. This bee flew and he hit the side of the helmet and got behind my glasses and it stung me right on the eye.
ugh.
Like not eyeball, but like right on like the eyelid, and it swole my eyelid shut. And I'm on this little 250 CBX 250 motorcycle, and I'm coming onto the highway, and I'm doing about 100, merging into the Trans Canada Highway, and there's a transport truck like just coming up to the intersection. Like I just had enough room to get ahead of them. So I'm pinning this thing, going along, like just trying to stay ahead of this truck and in with the traffic, and I got tears literally streaming out of one eye. And I ended up getting into Grand Falls, Windsor, and pulling off at my cousin's grandmother, not my grandmother, his on his other side. I pulled into their house, and my cousin was there. And I remember getting off the bike and just waiting for like the eye to swelling to go down enough that he could get back on the plane, drive the rest of the way home. Yeah,
Seeing we're
it's
on
rough.
motorcycles and bug stories. I did a track day at Chubby, and I was coming down the backstretch, and I was probably doing about 288, 290, and a
Ooh.
bee came in and hit me right there, broke the skin. I thought a rock hit me. It's just you seen like the pollen and bug parts around it, and so I mean it's a real problem on a motorcycle. I mean, yes, going a little excessively fast on a track. That's what it's for. You know what I mean? If you're gonna speed, do it safe. But I
Yeah.
mean, that still translates to the road. Doing 120 with one of those, shorty helmets with just a pair of sunglasses on. You imagine taking one of those in like the teeth?
Oh
Or
man,
worse yet, you go to yawn, it shoots like right down the back of your throat. But
I now have nothing but full face helmets. Like I see guys out there with the half helmets, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so cool," and I'm like, "No, man,
no,
Not cool.
No, I think I told you the reason I wear a full face helmet was because I had one, and I always have mine cracked a little bit just to let air in. And a
Yeah,
rock came up from a truck in front of me and hit the side of my visor and split it in two. And after that, I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, I'm never wearing anything but a full face helmet with the visor down. Because I was
I
told if
was
it had been down, it might have absorbed the impact a little better, but I don't know if there's any truth to that.
I was in Winnipeg, following it on the highway, and I was following a rock truck, and I had a full face helmet on, and it struck on my cheekbone. Like that's where, like, if it had
Oh,
gone through, it would have hit my cheekbone, and it left a huge gouge in the helmet. And that helmet saved my face. Like I am sure, if I wasn't wearing a helmet, I would have been in the hospital that day. Whether it would
probably,
have not,
easily.
had it not have even put me off the bike, which it probably would have, it was at least going to open up my cheek. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
would have been.
Probably would have cracked your cheekbone, is what my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I just noticed Dave said something, getting back to the bug thing, and this piques my interest. You and I got to try this. Not sure how we're going to try it. Well, I know how we're going to try it. I don't know how it's going to end up. But Dave, Real Big Monkey 1, mosquitoes rarely ever are higher than 6 feet off the ground. They can't fly, breathe, or whatever. They can't thrive high up. In the swamps of Georgia, they used to rig their hammocks 10 feet up in the trees to avoid the bugs or avoid the mosquitoes. I want to try this. Like I said, I know how I'm going to do it. I just don't know how it's all going to go down. You know what I mean? Like the first time I go to crawl out to go have a pee or something like that, I'm just going to, But I would be curious, Dave, um, how, can you give us a little bit more information, or do you have a video? I must have missed it if you do. About maybe the rigging up that high and how you get in and out and all that stuff. Like I've done high sets in hammocks before, but generally you always got a pretty good ladder tree or something to get into. You know what I mean? Like how would you rope ladders? There you go. Makes sense. Lives in New Glasgow. So yeah, we got to try that this year, Ben.
Well, yeah, I know how I can get up there. I, the thing with a hammock is never hang higher than you're willing to fall, right?
Well, that's kind of where I'm at. But if it's going to avoid, I just kind of want to test the theory of the mosquitoes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I just want to test the mosquitoes for the night and try it. Good luck. You know, and that's kind of what I'm thinking, Troy. My property that I still got down there that burnt, well, you know where it's at. You were the first on scene. I'm thinking about going down there and maybe trying to, because I mean, you're not going to find more mosquitoes. Um, and I may try going up there because that's literally, like I said, on the far end of the property. It's basically borderland swamp pond, whatever you want to call it.
You can
So,
come at my cabin and do it. We get horrible flies up there, and I got a ladder, so I can put you up as high as you want.
well, I was gonna say you have better trees for it. That's for sure. Because down Mirgamish, it's all spruce. It's all spruce trees, and the
Yeah, I got a
odd
lot of
popple, which I'm really hesitant to put anything in because 9 times out of 10, any popple that stand down there break within a couple years. So that would
yeah.
be my luck. 10 feet up and it breaks off at like the 6 foot mark. But
Anyway, let's just say we've hit our hour,
yeah, I was gonna say
which
we
is
kind of digressed the last 10 minutes here as normal.
yeah. We're starting to wander for sure, and I know me and you could easily go for 2 to 3 more hours talking about this kind of stuff and laughing and joking and carrying on. But I think maybe we should just do a quick summary, anyways. There is a ton of methods, everything from like bug nets, screens. I know I picked up I didn't mention this, like the ones that go over your hat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you mentioned like keeping it off your skin, so like a wide brim hat with a screen is a little bit better than like a baseball hat and one just sitting next to you. Um, but yeah, bug dopes. I mean, there's a ton of methods, and I think they're all worth trying and using. Like everyone has its advantages and disadvantages. But being as there's so many means for controlling it, just kind of tells you how big of an issue it is, right? Like, I can't think of another topic that has so many options of how you can control it and how you can minimize the effect. Like we have a couple of ways to keep warm. We have a couple of main sleep systems, tents, hammocks, things like that. But there's 1,000 ways to control the flies and the mosquitoes and the insects. And it's because it is such a detrimental effect on morale, on health. I mean, was it mosquitoes have killed more humans than any other thing, period.
Yeah, I think so because of malaria and stuff like that, and other diseases and airborne things, but or not airborne, vector-borne things.
But like they're they spread more disease than almost anything else in the history of man. Like they've killed more than wars. I think I read one time. So not so much here in Canada. Like they're an annoyance. They're not as big a health concern, but it just leads to sort of like the effect of it. And it's one of the beauties of the different methods. Like we love the hammocks because it does really protect you from this. Is there anything else popping up there? No.
No, I was just reading the comments about alligators. Something
Oh,
we don't have up here up north, but I have done the whole point the flashlight in the ditch and see eyes glowing back at you. So
right. I want to try alligator. I've never tried alligator.
I think it would probably taste all right. I mean, I don't know. I've tried snake. Can't be worse than that.
Anyone that's like bushcrafting near alligators that I can come hang out and we can get one to eat? Like, is this something we can arrange? I mean, not obviously not now. We can't travel outside the province, but
I mean, we can. There's just a lot of holdovers at the time. Have to cut off like 5 weeks.
yeah, no, it's too much of an effort.
But yeah.
But
Anyway, back on topic. I agree with you. Tons of ways of doing it. Realize there's not one perfect way. And the best thing you can do is find what works for you and combine different methods. Don't just marry one. Even though I use a bug net for my hammock or in my tent or stuff like that, I still wear some sort of bug spray generally, or I'll do the old bounce sheet if I know there's going to be more black flies. Definitely have a fire and let it smolder and smoke a little bit to keep the bugs down during the worst parts of the day, first thing in the morning and later in the evening when it's cool and moist. Um, so yeah, play around, see what works good with you. Come back and let us know. I mean, as bushcrafters, we are always excited to hear what works good to keep bugs away. And anybody that camps or does anything like that, we all love to hear new methods that work great.
but and I'm sure you've done this too. Like when you just choose your sites properly. Like there are times like I've been out camping and I see a site and I'm like, man, that'd be an awesome site, but not in the spring. Like there's one in Kedge that I can picture right now, and anyone who's probably ever been in Kedge, I could probably even list the number, and I'm sure they'd think the same thing. And it's a beautiful spot, but it's on a slow moving river, and
Just has the
it's
map and he starts hauling it out.
yeah. Site 10. If anyone ever wants to go to Kedge, Site 10 is awesome looking. I would never do it in like spring. I'd be like fall. Like in the fall, I go there 100%. But in the spring, it looks like it would be a nightmare to me. Like every time I've gone by, that's the thought I got through. It's like this is a moving, meandering river with like a lot of, like you said, like evergreens sitting there, like softwood forest. And it just looks really sheltered. You get no breeze. And I think it would like carry you away, right? And yes, I always have a map of Kedge near me.
I was about to say, is that the same map you pulled out when we went to dinner? When we were at, where did we go? We went to, you guys came down here. Where did we end up going? Chicken. Swiss
Probably
Chalet.
Shell. Yeah.
Is that the same map? Because you did have that in your pocket. Yeah, that's the map. Okay. And yeah, what's that?
What are you saying? I don't get it.
Just saying, it's a weird map to carry around in your pocket. Need a map of
Oh,
Kedge? Oh, do I got a treat for you?
maybe or maybe not. In a few minutes before this show, I was talking to someone about camping trips. It's possible that at any given time I've been talking with someone about the next camping trip.
Well, I think I sent you pictures of just this last weekend. We went trail walking. Found a wood sprite. Things were good. But yeah,
Who made
and
the spray?
what's that?
You know who made the spray?
Not a clue. It was just there, which I
Yeah.
thought was kind of neat. Made me think of you. That's why I sent you the picture. But And I'll add that picture on Facebook there too. It's kind of cool. And yeah, the last thought there that Alex said is one thing to keep in mind with some natural and chemical solutions is they react differently to different people and how their body processes the chemical. So don't just grab something off the shelf and run into the woods and try it and find out, like 6 hours away from civilization that you're allergic to it. Definitely give it
Yeah.
a quick spray. When you get home, usually like on the inside of your arm, if you can put it on your skin. If you can't put it on your skin, put it on your clothing. And just a little bit, give it an hour or so and see how you react to it. Always better to find out close to home that maybe you don't want that in your face in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. And something to think about, even like the thermocells. Like I think the thermocells are a great idea. Make sure you take an adequate supply,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't want to say, "Oh, I got this great method. It works 100% great," but then you have like really enough for 2 days and you're gone for 4 days. You're now in 2 days. It's still 2 days out. You're gonna,
You are
take out.
now into that desperate situation where you're covering yourself in mud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dave, once again, never thought of this, never tried it. Cover your tent with an extra bug net, crawl under it before unzipping your tent, acts like a secondary barrier. I imagine
Oh
that
yeah.
would actually work pretty good. I've never tried it myself, but yeah, I think that sums it up for me. Like you said, we kind of killed our hour. We rambled for a while, then we got back on topic, so things were good. But yeah, anything else you want to add into this? I think we kind of covered it.
No, I have a four-legged creature that's trying to distract me. Sorry.
Not going to include what the four-legged creature is. There's so many things I want to say and so many things I can't say. But there she is. What's up, Poochie?
She's coming in. She's whining. She's looking at me. She's wagging her tails. There's something she needs.
All right. Well, we better let you go so you can see their needs. And same as always, thanks everybody that joined in. As we said, if you try some stuff or find some stuff, send us some information. Because if there's something out there that works good for bugs and I'm not doing it, I want to know about it.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is a subject that I think we're always interested in, and I'm sure we've talked a little bit about it in the past, and I'm sure we'll talk again if there's anything new comes up. But yeah, it's something that really can make or break a trip, is being able to control the bugs, and I have seen a single bug ruin a trip, literally. So.
Food for thought. Hopefully not your blood. Night, everybody.